There is such thing as good debt. This is probably the question I get the most because it's one of the biggest difference between Dave Ramsey and I. Dave Ramsey has preached no debt from the beginning of time. And while I do believe that was the case in the 70s, 80s, and part of the 90s, when he was up and coming and creating his curriculum, I don't believe it's the case now. People just can't get ahead. And the idea that you're going to save 20% down to go on a 15-year mortgage when you're 25 years old is just never going to happen nowadays. He's built his whole identity on this process, and so I get why he's sticking to it. But what's happening is inside the financial literacy world, there's a massive void that people still think that's how they should live. And it's actually hurting them, in my opinion, nowadays. And we need to teach how to properly utilize good debt, what the rules between good debt, bad debt are, how to pay it off, the snowball, avalanche, everything around debt, because we're not being taught it right now. This is exactly what we're going to deep dive into. What considered good debt, what's considered bad debt, how to pay it off, your survival fund, and everything to do with debt is what we're going to go over for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Super excited to dive in because I firmly believe that good debt is the difference between you retiring a millionaire and you retiring like the average American with $180,000 in your account. Okay, so first off, we need to define what is good debt and bad debt because we're going to use that term throughout this entire 15-minute video. So I am going to say that good debt is anything below an 8% interest rate. Now, that's going to be different for all of you. Okay, I'm using 8% as a general rule of thumb because my job is to give general rule of thumbs. You have to decide your risk tolerance. For some, it might be 6, for some, it might be 10. But generally, we're going to say 8%. The reason I'm saying 8% is because when you can borrow money at a very low percent and invest it and get a higher percent and make that spread, this is how every wealthy person known to mankind becomes wealthy. Now, that statement you may disagree with, but let me give you an example and then I'll tell you how risk tolerance plays in. Let's say I could give you $1 billion right now at a 0% interest rate. It's interest only payments, which there is no interest. You don't have to pay me a single dollar until the day you die. And on the day you die, you have to give me back $1 billion. You'd be an idiot not to take that because you could take that $1 billion and go diversify it across 1 million different government bonds and in savings accounts. The most secure investments known to mankind, okay? Basically, our economy and world would have to crash if that money was to go away. You can earn 4, 5, 6% on those government bonds, which means you're gonna make, someone fact check me, I think it's like $40 million or something like that, every single year for the rest of your life. And then when it's done, you just pull all that money out and give it back. It's a no-brainer. We're all like, oh yeah, but that doesn't exist. The concept applies everywhere. You just have to decide what is the spread that you're comfortable with. If you had a 1% loan and you could get the average stock market over the last 100 years is 9.9%. Would you take that? 99% of Americans would say yes. 2% and 10%, 3% and 10%, you understand. Everyone's going to have a different risk tolerance of where they're willing to borrow money to invest it in a pretty secure investment. There's risk in everything. And try to make that spread. This is the entire concept around rental properties and why people say real estate is such a good investment is because it's one of the easiest assets to get debt on. If you can go get an investment property at 3, 4, 5, 6, even 7%, rent it out, get appreciation, get the tax benefits, get all of that stuff and return 10, 12, 15%, you will become wealthy. That is what some of the most wealthy people in the world have done is inside real estate because they're playing the exact game we're talking about. So back to original concept of good debt, bad debt. I'm going to say it's 8% because for most Americans, that's probably where the average is because we know that the stock market returns us 9.9% over the last 100 years if you average it. You have to decide where your interest rate is, but anything over 8% is bad debt. That's consumer debt. That is a liability, is not an asset. Anything under 8% has the potential to be good debt if you treat it the right way. Once you've identified what your high interest debt is or your bad debt, we need to come up with a plan to pay it off as fast as you possibly can. I personally believe in the snowball method. There's a snowball method, an avalanche method. I've done a lot of videos on the difference between these two. You can go research it, find it out, everything like that. I'm going to teach you the snowball method today because statistically it is the most proven way to get out of debt. Quick overview of the two. The snowball method, you line up all your debts that are bad debts, over 8% for our sake right now. And you start with the smallest balance and work your way up to the largest balance. What you're going to do is you're going to pay off the smallest balance first. And then once that one's paid off, you're going to take what was the minimum payment there and all your extra money that you're using to pay off debt. You're going to combine them and you're going to go after the next one. Then you're going to take the minimum payment of that one and the first one, combine it with your extra money and then pay the next one. It creates a snowball effect where the more debts you pay off, the more money you have to attack the larger balances. The reason this is so successful is the psychological wins. I am a big numbers guy. I never go on psychological measures because you can't prove it with numbers. The number here, though, is if you see the victories of paying off debts and constantly rolling those into the next one, that mental win for you will make more people get out of debt using that method than the avalanche. The avalanche method, just real quick, you line up all your debts once again, but you do it from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. The issue with this, actually, the avalanche method, technically you'll save an extra $10, $15, $20 of interest payments doing it that way than this way. But the difference is a lot of people will have a large debt. 10, 15, 20, $30,000 as one of their highest interest rates. That's the one they're attacking for years. It can become very depressing. They go back into their old ways and they never actually get out of debt. So do the snowball method and roll it up. If you have $100 a month you can use to pay off your debt because you budgeted well, you're gonna throw $100 a month at that smallest one till you have it. Let's say the minimum payment on that one was $40. So now you have $140 to attack the next one. The minimum payment was another $40 there. Now you have $180 to attack the next one, and you're going to snowball into the bigger and bigger ones until you're completely out of bad debt. There is trillions of dollars spent every single year advertising bad debt in America. Think about it. You can get bad debt everywhere. You can get it at the furniture store. You can get it at the phone store. You can get it at the electronics store. You can get it from credit cards. You can get it from cars. You can get it from personal loans. People are constantly trying to feed you bad debt. I was so mad the other day on Amazon. It popped up and said, would you like to finance this $200 purchase? You go read it. The interest rate is like 300% on that. People are clicking yes to that, and it's an absolute sham in my opinion. You need to get out of bad debt as fast as you can using the snowball method. Once you are out of bad debt, you're now going to look at all your debts and figure out what your risk tolerance is. Is there other debts that you want to pay off, or is there not other debts you want to pay off? And what you need to think about is the opportunity cost depending on where you're at. If you're in your 20s and you've paid off all debt over an 8%, and you have $200 extra and your next debt is a car loan at 3%, okay? And it's a $50,000 car loan. If you pay $200 a month at that car loan, it's going to take you years to pay off that car loan. Or if you took that $200 and want to invest it in just a broad-based ETF like the S&P 500 or VTI, total market, NASDAQ, whatever it is, I don't care. Invest at your own risk, figure out, research it. If you invest in something like that, $200 every single time, at the end of the term, when you would have paid off the car, or you look at that investment and you went fast forward to the same day, you will have so much more money in the investment account because it's compounding your growth on top of it, not just compounding your debt down. Investing in yourself and getting compound interest on your side will maximize your wealth faster than anything else. You are going to have to determine where your risk factors are at and what you're willing to do. But when you're young and you have some good debt, you have home rates at 3, 4, 5%, you have car rates at 4, 5, 6%. Those can be good debts if you take the money and actually go invest in yourself and your future rather than just going and blowing it on stupid stuff. If the option is pay down debt or blow it on a meal, pay down the debt. If the option is pay down debt or invest in the stock market or a real estate deal or myself, this most often is going to give you a much better return than paying off the good debt. Now that we've identified what good debt is, what bad debt is, hopefully I've convinced you there is such thing as good debt. And we've talked about the snowball method of how to get out of debt. The next thing that you need to be aware of is what your emergency fund is. I probably should have put this first, but it kind of is a hybrid between first and third step. When you create your budget and identify that you have a bunch of bad debt and you're going to pay it down, before you ever pay $1, you need to come up with a small emergency fund. In my opinion, this should be probably $500 to $1,000. Most people have a budget that they can live within. Most people, they may live paycheck to paycheck, but they have a budget that they can live within. What actually gets most people in debt is not the day-to-day paychecks, it's the one-off expenses. It's the time that you have to register your car and it takes an extra $400 you weren't planning on, or your tire pops and you have to buy a new tire. Those are the expenses that get put on credit cards and put you in debt that become very, very hard to get out of. By building up your survival fund with just $500 to $1,000 first, before you start paying off your bad debt, what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to have that cushion there set aside so that you can completely focus on paying down your bad debt. And if one of those expenses come on, you don't have to just swipe the card and restart at ground one because you have a little nest egg that can pay it off. Keeping this nest egg is going to keep you out of going into further debt, retreating back to your old habits, and is going to allow you to focus on getting out of bad debt once and for all. This one time is the last time you'll ever have to do this because you have that survival fund set up to the side to cover those one-time expenses over the next year or two while you're getting out of bad debt. Once you have that $500 to $1,000 set aside, then we attack everything else with bad debt. If we need to pull from this, we're going to take away from bad debt and put that extra couple $100 a month to beefing this back up so that we can go back to bad debt. Once you get out of bad debt, you then need to go back to your survival fund before you start investing. And you need to have, I'm going to say between 2 and 6 months in that survival fund before you can start investing for the exact same purpose. The normal person can't go one paycheck without making their bills. If you have the ability to go 2, 3, 4 months without a paycheck, you are beating almost every single American, like 90% of Americans. So 1, take the mental win of knowing that you're beating the majority of Americans and you're not living paycheck to paycheck. But 2, this is going to give you the financial freedom of the stress it gives to your mind to make the decisions that are smartest. If you have a $500 survival fund and you're in a job you absolutely hate and an opportunity comes up that you want to take, but you know that you'll be 2, 3, 4 weeks without a job, you're probably going to stay in the dead-end job that you absolutely hate because you don't have the financial flexibility to make the moves that you want to make. Having this nest egg set aside will give you the financial freedom to make the moves that you want to make in life, and will also, when these random expenses come up, give you the opportunity to take care of them and not just swiping the credit card and getting back in debt. 2, 4, 6 months, whatever it is you need to do. Now, the survival fund's going to change for everyone. If you're a tenured teacher for 20 years, 2 months is probably fine. If you're a sales guy that has pure commission, you're probably going to need 6 months. Look at your job, look at your security, determine what your survival fund needs to be, but make sure you beef that up somewhere between 2 and 6 months. I know there's a lot to go over, but conceptually, I hope you're taking notes. We've identified good, bad debt. We've set up $500. We've paid off all our bad debt. Now we set up 2 months here. Now the fun begins because you actually get to start investing and figuring out how you're going to secure your financial future. Now, instead of looking for debt to fund a lifestyle, you can look for debt to actually fund your retirement. Now, I'm not saying go hunt down debt, but the one thing that I've learned from all the multimillionaires and billionaires that I've interviewed is they are always negotiating and restructuring their debt. They're finding new ways to get it cheaper. They're finding investors. They're refinancing houses. They're figuring out how to get others people's money to work for them. You need to take a card from their notebook and understand the same thing. Now, don't go shopping for debt. Don't get into debt meaninglessly, but understand that debt can be a tool when used properly in your investing future. Now, whether that means you buy investment property or you buy a home, you live in it for 2 years and then you go buy another home and you rent out this old one that has a little mortgage on it. Understand that there are ways to use debt that can actually maximize your returns. I'm going to leave you with one really powerful example on this so you understand what this actually means. I'm going to use real estate again because it's conceptually the easiest for all of us to understand, but you can do the same thing with businesses. You can do the same thing with stocks. You can do the same thing with almost any asset. It just takes a little bit more work. Let's say you can find a home for $100,000. I know those don't exist in the United States really anymore, but just for easy math, okay? And if you had a $100,000 home you could purchase and you put down all cash, $100,000, that $100,000, real estate on average, let's say it goes up 5%. You put $100,000 into an investment and it returned you, if it went up 5%, $5,000. Your home's now worth $105,000. That's a 5% return. Now let's say you have the same $100,000 home, but you're going to buy as an investment property. You have to put 20% down, okay? Let's say you put 20% down on the property and that home goes up by 5% again. It went up the same $5,000, but you went 20,000, went up 5,000. That's a 25% return on your money. When you are able to leverage assets, the same growth in the asset returns exponentially more money, and that's how you get the returns that you want. People will talk about the rich getting 10, 20, 30, 40% returns. The reason they're able to do that is because they're utilizing good debt to maximize those returns. If you can use an asset with leverage, that is how you secure your financial future. Now be smart, okay? Have liquidity. Understand the risk. No investment is risk-free. Always do your own research. Debt can be very risky, but understand it. Get the financial literacy you need. Go follow me on social media. Listen to my podcast. Go binge stuff on my YouTube. My whole goal in life is to educate the average person on financial literacy so they can have the same leg up that everyone else has inside of this. You can understand the tax codes, understand how to grow your net worth so you don't feel like you're just struggling, trying to work every minute of your day to earn $1. Instead, your dollars can go earn you money through interest and compound returns. I love putting these videos out there. If you enjoyed this video, you want me to create more, make sure to like and subscribe so I can keep doing what I love doing. That's educating everyone on financial literacy.